The massive space station Concordia Prime floated silently in the void between star systems, its gleaming metal surfaces reflecting the light from distant suns. Inside its central chamber, representatives from across the galaxy had gathered for what many hoped would be the most important peace talks in galactic history. Ambassador Lee Minutho walked through the curved corridors, his black diplomatic uniform crisp and formal. His face showed no emotion, but inside his mind raced with concern. 3 months of growing conflict between humans and the Zephyrian Empire had brought them to this moment. War seemed closer each day, and these talks might be their last chance to avoid it. The negotiation room was enormous, with a circular table that could seat hundreds of beings. Each section was designed for different alien species, some needed water tanks, others required special gases to breathe, and a few existed as pure energy. The humans sat in simple chairs, looking almost primitive compared to the elaborate setups around them. Across the table, War Prime Sekthar towered over his own delegation. The Zephyrian leader was nearly 8 feet tall, covered in dark green scales that caught the light like armor. His yellow eyes, cold as winter ice, stared at the human delegation with obvious hatred. Behind him, 12 other Zephyrians sat in perfect military formation, their backs straight and their claws resting on the table. Captain Kim Dae-hee, seated beside the ambassador, quietly reviewed her datapad. She was young for such an important position, but her sharp mind had earned her place on the diplomatic team. Her fingers moved quickly across the screen, checking facts and figures about the disputed territory. Commander Park Ji-won sat on the ambassador's other side, his military background evident in his perfect posture. Unlike the other humans, he wore a dark blue uniform marked with service ribbons. His eyes constantly scanned the room, noting exits and potential threats with the instincts of a soldier. The dispute centered on the Kepler Nebula, a region of space rich in rare minerals that both species claimed. Human colonists had been mining there for over 50 years, building homes and raising families on the asteroid settlements. But the Zephyrians insisted the entire area belonged to them, calling it their ancestral territory. War Prime Sekthar's voice filled the chamber when he spoke, his words translated by a small device attached to his throat. The mechanical voice made his threat sound even more frightening. These mammals have stolen what belongs to the Zephyrian Empire. The sacred mining grounds of our ancestors will be returned to us. Around the circular table, other alien species watched nervously. The Vorthak were tall crystalline beings who communicated through musical tones and light patterns. When worried, their crystal bodies vibrated with high-pitched sounds that hurt human ears. Right now, they were practically singing with anxiety. The hive-mind creatures looked like giant insects, with compound eyes and clicking mandibles. They spoke in rapid clicks and buzzes, their translation coming through speakers built into the table. Conflict threatens stability. New species disrupts ancient balance. Most mysterious were the ethereals, beings made of pure energy who could barely maintain physical form. They flickered between visible light and invisible radiation, appearing as ghostly human shapes one moment and disappearing completely the next. Their fear showed in how unstable their forms had become. Ambassador Lee stood slowly, his movement calm and deliberate. Every gesture was carefully controlled, showing no sign of anger or fear. Honored representatives, humanity seeks only peaceful cooperation with all species. Our mining operations in the Kepler Nebula follow all established galactic laws. He activated a holographic display that showed detailed records of human settlement in the disputed region. Each document bore official seals from the Galactic Council, proving that human colonization had been legal and proper. Our colonists have lived and worked in these systems for 2 generations, Lee continued. They have built schools, hospitals, and farms. These are not temporary mining camps, but permanent homes for over 12 million human beings. War Prime Sekthar slammed his clawed hand on the table with a sound like breaking stone. Documents mean nothing. The strong take what they need, and the weak surrender what they cannot protect. Your species is young and soft. You will leave our territory or face the consequences. The threat hung in the air like poison gas. Every alien in the room understood what those consequences would be: war between 2 spacefaring civilizations, with technology capable of destroying entire worlds. Captain Kim leaned close to Ambassador Lee and whispered, "Sir, intelligence reports suggest they have allies. This may not be a fair negotiation." Lee nodded slightly but kept his expression neutral. He had suspected as much. The Zephyrians were acting too confident for a species that should be worried about human military capabilities. Commander Park's trained eyes noticed something others missed. The Zephyrian delegation kept glancing toward the Vorthak representatives, sharing looks that suggested secret communications. He made a mental note to include this observation in his report to military command. The first day of talks ended with no progress. Each side stated their position clearly. Humans offered to share the disputed territory, while Zephyrians demanded complete human withdrawal. There seemed to be no middle ground. That evening, the human delegation met in their private quarters aboard the station. The rooms were simple but comfortable, designed to accommodate human needs for privacy and rest. "They are not negotiating in good faith," Captain Kim said, reviewing the day's recordings. "Every compromise offer was rejected immediately." Commander Park nodded grimly. "This feels like theater, sir. They're going through the motions of peace talks while preparing for something else." Ambassador Lee sat quietly for a long moment, staring out the viewport at the stars. Somewhere out there, human families were going about their daily lives, unaware that their future might be decided in this sterile conference room. "Begin implementing evacuation protocols for all non-essential personnel in the border systems," he said finally. "Quietly, and make it look routine. Something tells me these talks are going to end badly." The second day of peace talks began with an insult that echoed through the massive conference chamber. War Prime Sekthar arrived 40 minutes late, his heavy footsteps announcing his presence long before he entered the room. The Zephyrian leader moved slowly, deliberately, making sure everyone understood that he considered their time worthless. Ambassador Lee Minute-ho remained seated, his hands folded calmly on the table. Captain Kim Dae-hee checked her timepiece and made notes on her datapad, while Commander Park Ji-won watched the late arrivals with the cold eyes of a soldier. Around the circular table, other alien representatives shifted nervously, understanding that lateness in galactic diplomacy was a calculated show of disrespect. When Sekthar finally took his seat, his entire manner had changed from the previous day. Where before he had been hostile but still engaged in actual negotiation, now he radiated the confidence of someone who held all the winning cards in a deadly game. "The Zephyrian Empire has reconsidered our position overnight," Sekthar announced, his mechanical translator making his voice sound even more threatening. "Your species will evacuate not only the Kepler Nebula, but all 17 star systems in what you mistakenly call your Outer Rim territories." The words hit the chamber like a physical blow. Captain Kim's stylus snapped between her fingers, the sharp crack audible in the sudden silence. Commander Park's jaw tightened, but his expression remained carefully neutral. Lee stood slowly, his diplomatic training keeping his voice steady. "War Prime Sekthar, you are demanding the evacuation of our most established colonial regions. 12 million human civilians have made their homes in those systems. That is their problem, not ours," Sekthar replied with what passed for a smile among his species, a display of sharp teeth that looked more like a threat than an expression of pleasure. "Furthermore, as payment for decades of illegal occupation, humanity will transfer 60% of its military fleet to Zephyrian command." The chamber erupted in shocked responses. The Vorthak crystals sang out high-pitched notes of disbelief, while the Hivemind delegates clicked rapidly in their insect language. Even the normally calm ethereals flickered more wildly than usual, their energy forms barely maintaining stability. But Sekthar was not finished. "Additionally, human worlds will provide resource tributes equal to your total planetary production for the next 100 years. These terms are generous, considering we could simply take everything by force." Commander Park leaned toward Ambassador Lee. "Sir, those aren't negotiation terms. Those are surrender demands designed to humiliate us completely." Lee nodded slightly, his mind racing through possibilities. Something had changed overnight, some new factor that made the Zephyrians believe they could make such impossible demands. "War Prime Sekthar," Lee said carefully, "these terms would effectively end human civilization as we know it. No species could accept such conditions and survive." "Then perhaps your species needs to reconsider its place in this galaxy," Sekthar replied. His yellow eyes glittered with cruel satisfaction. "The balance of power has shifted, Ambassador. You have 72 hours to begin evacuations of all disputed territories. After that time, the Empire will take necessary military action." The Vorthak delegate's crystalline form resonated with a tone that roughly translated as agreement, confirmation of what many in the room had already suspected. The Zephyrians had gained powerful allies who were backing their impossible demands. Lee requested a brief recess, leading his small delegation to a secure chamber away from alien ears. Once the privacy shields activated, the careful diplomatic masks slipped slightly. "They never intended to negotiate fairly," Captain Kim said, her voice tight with controlled anger. "This whole conference has been a show to make us look unreasonable when we reject their terms." Commander Park activated his secure communication device. "Sir, Intelligence reports suggest at least 3 major galactic powers are secretly supporting the Zephyrians. They believe they can force complete human capitulation through overwhelming force. The holographic image of Admiral Choi In-soo materialized in the center of the room, his weathered face grim with understanding. Ambassador, I've been monitoring the situation. What's your assessment of successful negotiation? 0%, Admiral. They're demanding our complete surrender disguised as peace terms. They want us to abandon our colonies, surrender our military, and pay tribute that would bankrupt our civilization. Admiral Choi was quiet for a long moment, his expression growing darker. Are you requesting Protocol 7 authorization? The question seemed to suck all air from the room. Captain Kim and Commander Park exchanged worried glances. They had heard whispers of mysterious military protocols but never expected to see them implemented. Not yet, Lee replied carefully. But I need all civilian evacuations accelerated immediately. Non-essential personnel should be clear of contested zones within the next 2 days. Already in progress, the Admiral confirmed. Transport ships are being redirected, and families are being moved to secure systems. The evacuation looks routine from the outside. When the talks resumed, Ambassador Lee made one final attempt to find a peaceful solution. War Prime Sector, humanity offers a reasonable compromise. Joint administration of disputed systems, shared mining rights, and collaborative research programs that could benefit both our civilizations. Sector did not even let him finish speaking. Completely unacceptable. You now have 60 hours remaining before military action begins. Use that time wisely. Lee gathered his documents and stood with quiet dignity. Then I formally declare these peace talks concluded. The Galactic Council record will show that humanity made every reasonable effort to achieve a peaceful resolution to this dispute. As the human delegation filed out of the chamber, alien observers noted something that would later seem prophetic. Unlike other species who might have shown anger, desperation, or made last-minute threats, the humans simply left. They showed no emotion, made no dramatic speeches, and issued no warnings. They simply walked away as if this outcome had been expected and prepared for. That night, as the space station settled into its quiet cycle, Galactic Intelligence Services began intercepting human military communications. What they heard defied every expectation of how a threatened species should behave when facing overwhelming odds. The humans were not panicking, begging for help, or seeking last-minute alliances. Instead, they were implementing something called Protocol 7 with the cold efficiency of a machine designed for war. 12 hours after the peace talks collapsed, strange messages began flowing through space. Alien intelligence services across the galaxy worked frantically to decode human military communications, but what they discovered sent waves of confusion and growing fear through every major civilization. The first intercepted transmission came from Earth's military command center, buried deep beneath the planet's surface. Admiral Choi In-soo sat in a room filled with holographic displays showing human colonies, military positions, and enemy fleet movements. His voice was calm, almost conversational, as he spoke to Fleet Commander Yoon Jae-minute. Commander, all civilian assets have reached safe positions. You have authorization to implement Protocol 7. Understood, Admiral. May our ancestors forgive us for what we are about to do. The ethereal consciousness, which could sense emotional patterns across vast distances of space, immediately sent urgent warnings to the Galactic Council. Their energy forms flickered wildly as they transmitted their message. The human emotional signature has changed completely. We no longer detect fear, anger, or desperation. Instead, there is only cold calculation, like a machine designed for killing. On the crystal worlds of the Vorthak Confederation, their musical communication networks carried worried songs about the strange calmness coming from human space. They should be panicking, the crystal beings sang to each other. All species panic when facing extinction. Why are the humans so quiet? In Earth's war room, military leaders from every human colony and fleet command gathered around a massive holographic table. The youngest person present was Captain Han Soo-jin, barely 30 years old but already commanding 3 destroyer squadrons. She studied the enemy fleet positions with growing concern. Sir, the combined Zephyrian and Vorthak forces outnumber our ships 4-1, she reported to Admiral Choi. Their weapons are as good as ours, and they can build new ships faster than we can. Admiral Choi nodded, his expression showing no worry despite the terrible odds. Captain, traditional military thinking would suggest we should surrender or retreat to save lives. But that's not what we're going to do, said General Nam Tai-ho, commander of the Colonial Marines. His scarred face told the story of dozens of battles on hostile worlds where humans had carved out homes despite impossible conditions. No, the Admiral confirmed quietly. They wanted to see how humanity responds to threats of extinction. They are about to learn why we are the only species to survive multiple attempts by our own planet to kill us. Colonel Li Yijin, head of strategic operations, activated a classified display that showed targets throughout Zephyrian and Vorthak space. But these were not the usual military targets that other species would attack. The list included civilian factories, shipping lanes, communication networks, and industrial centers. Protocol 7 is comprehensive infrastructure warfare, she explained to the younger officers. We do not simply defeat their military forces. We eliminate their ability to make war ever again. The alien intelligence services listening to these communications struggled to understand the human military language. Terms like acceptable losses parameters, civilian infrastructure targeting, and total war implementation had no equivalent in other species' military thinking. Captain Han raised her hand hesitantly. Colonel, some of these targets are civilian facilities. Doesn't that violate the rules of war? Colonel Li's expression hardened. Captain, their orbital factories make both toys and weapons. Their shipping lanes carry both food and military supplies. Their communication networks broadcast both entertainment and battle orders. In total war, everything becomes a military target because everything supports the war effort. The room fell silent as the implications became clear. This was not the clean, honorable combat that most galactic species practiced. This was something far more brutal and complete. Across human space, the transformation was visible to anyone watching. Military ships took defensive positions, but more disturbing was what happened to civilian society. Factories that made household goods began producing weapons and ammunition. Shipping companies converted their fleets to carry military supplies. Research stations redirected their work toward developing new ways to destroy enemy infrastructure. The galaxy watched in growing horror as humanity demonstrated something no other species had ever achieved: the complete transformation of an entire civilization from peace to total war in less than 2 days. Fleet Commander Yoon's voice crackled through the communication system from his flagship. Admiral, enemy fleets are advancing toward our border systems. They are using standard attack formations, expecting us to meet them in traditional ship-to-ship combat. Let them think that, Admiral Choi replied with the first hint of satisfaction in his voice. They expect us to fight like civilized beings. Instead, they are about to discover what it means to fight a species that survived by being more dangerous than everything that tried to kill us. The hive mind creatures, with their collective intelligence spanning thousands of individual beings, sent a frightened message to other species. This is not normal military preparation. This is evolutionary adaptation to existential threat. No other species in galactic history has shown this capability. The most terrifying moment came when alien codebreakers finally decoded references to other human military protocols. Protocol 7, the systematic destruction of enemy infrastructure, was apparently just the beginning. Human military communications mentioned protocols 8 through 12, with protocol 12 labeled simply as species termination parameters. What could possibly be worse than destroying an enemy's entire civilization? The Vorthak Confederation asked themselves, their crystal forms resonating with frequencies of pure fear. On the insectoid worlds of the hive mind, billions of creatures clicked in unison, their collective intelligence trying to understand what humanity might be capable of beyond what they had already revealed. The answer would come soon enough, as human fleets began moving toward enemy positions with the methodical precision of predators who had already decided that their prey would not survive the encounter. In the depths of space, Warprime Sekthar received reports of human fleet movements and felt the first stirrings of doubt about his species' chances of victory. The first battle began in the Alio system, where Warprime Sekthar expected to show the galaxy how easily the Zephyrian Empire could crush the young human species. His massive fleet of warships moved in perfect formation, following thousands of years of established combat traditions. Each ship was positioned according to ancient battle plans that had won wars across the galaxy. But the humans refused to fight by the rules. Captain Park Minutsu commanded the human destroyer Soul's Pride, leading a small squadron against ships 3 times larger than his own. Instead of engaging in the traditional ship-to-ship combat that Sekthar expected, Park's vessels swarmed around the enemy fleet like angry insects, striking quickly and disappearing before the heavier weapons could target them. "Sir, the Zephyrians are demanding that we follow proper combat protocols," reported Lieutenant Kim So-young from her communication station. Her young face showed confusion about why the enemy would make such requests during battle. Captain Park's expression was as cold as deep space. Tell them that Earth doesn't recognize combat rules designed to help our enemies kill us more easily. Continue targeting their life support and communication systems. The Zephyrian commanders watched in growing horror as human ships ignored their mighty weapons to attack seemingly unimportant systems. Instead of trying to destroy the enemy vessels, the humans systematically disabled their ability to function. Ships found themselves floating helplessly in space as their air recycling failed and their communication networks went dead. But the real nightmare began when the human fleet completely ignored the Zephyrian battle formation and flew past them to attack what should have been safe targets far behind the front lines. Admiral Choi's strategy became terrifyingly clear as human forces struck directly at the infrastructure that supported the enemy war effort. Captain Kang Hanyul, commanding the carrier Busan Victory, led her fighter squadrons against Zephyrian supply depots throughout the entire star system. Her pilots didn't just attack military storage facilities. They systematically destroyed fuel refineries that powered both civilian and military ships. They eliminated orbital construction yards that built both passenger transports and warships. They targeted communication relays that carried both family messages and battle orders. Admiral, we're receiving protests from multiple alien species, Communications Officer Jung Minute Ho reported to Admiral Choi. They're calling our tactics barbaric and demanding that we follow established rules of warfare. Admiral Choi activated the broad-spectrum transmitter that would send his message to every listening post in the galaxy. His words would be remembered for generations to come. War Prime Sekthar and allied commanders, you declared that might makes right in this galaxy. You threatened to destroy our colonies and enslave our people. You demanded our complete surrender and the end of human civilization. This is how humanity responds to existential threats. The broadcast continued, carried by relay stations to every corner of known space. Your species have studied our history. You know we survived ice ages that should have killed us. We survived massive predators that should have eaten us. We survived diseases that should have wiped us from existence. We survived by being more ruthless and more determined than anything that tried to destroy us. You wanted to see that side of humanity. You have succeeded. On the contested worlds of the Kepler Nebula, Colonel Yo Jiha led ground operations that defied every expectation of civilized warfare. Her colonial marines didn't just capture territory, they systematically dismantled every piece of infrastructure that could possibly support future military operations. Mining equipment that extracted materials for both construction and weapons was destroyed or captured. Transportation networks that moved both families and soldiers were systematically eliminated. Power generation facilities that provided energy for both homes and military bases were targeted without discrimination. Colonel, we're receiving complaints from neutral observers, reported Major Lee Dong-hyun, watching the systematic destruction with growing unease. They say we're attacking civilian targets. Colonel Yo's response would be quoted in military academies for centuries. Major, in total war there is no such thing as purely civilian infrastructure. Every factory that makes toys can make weapons. Every truck that carries food can carry ammunition. Every power plant that lights homes can power weapons systems. We are not being cruel, we are being complete. The Vorthak Confederation, watching their Zephyrian allies being systematically destroyed, decided to intervene with their own massive fleet. Their crystalline warships advanced in beautiful formations, confident that their superior numbers would overwhelm the humans through sheer force. Fleet Commander Yoon Jae-min's response became legendary throughout the galaxy. Instead of engaging the Vorthak fleet in direct combat, he ordered his ships to target something that no species in galactic history had ever dared to threaten: the crystal nursery worlds where young Vorthak grew to maturity. The attack was precisely calculated. Human weapons disabled the environmental controls that maintained perfect growing conditions for crystal children, but did not cause direct casualties. The message was clear and terrifying. This is Fleet Commander Yoon to all Vorthak vessels. Your future generations are now under human control. Any hostile action against our forces will result in permanent damage to your reproductive capabilities. We strongly suggest immediate withdrawal. The Vorthak Confederation, faced with the potential extinction of their species, immediately ceased all military operations and fled the system. Their panicked retreat was broadcast across the galaxy, showing every species what happened when humans decided you were a threat to their survival. But the most chilling moment came when intercepted human communications revealed that this systematic destruction of two galactic civilizations was considered a minor response. Protocol 7 was just the beginning of humanity's capacity for warfare. Sir, should we implement Protocol 8? Asked Captain Lim Ju-won as the final Zephyrian resistance collapsed. Negative, came the cold reply. Protocol 7 is sufficient for this threat level. Save Protocols 8 through 12 for true existential dangers. The galaxy shuddered at the implication that what they had witnessed was humanity being gentle. 2 weeks after the peace talks collapsed, the mighty Zephyrian Empire had become a collection of helpless worlds floating in space. Their once proud fleet was gone, their factories were silent, and their communication networks were dead. War Prime Sekthar sat alone in his palace on the Zephyrian homeworld, staring at reports that told the same story over and over: complete defeat. The Vorthak Confederation had fled to their most distant systems and sent desperate messages to Earth begging for peace treaties. Their crystal cities, which had sung with confident music just weeks before, now resonated with frequencies of pure terror. Ambassador Lee Minutho stood once again before the Galactic Council, but this time the massive chamber was filled with a different kind of tension. Every alien representative looked at the human delegation with a mixture of fear and horrified respect. Lee's calm diplomatic manner, which had seemed so reasonable during the failed peace talks, now appeared terrifying in its complete lack of emotion. The Human Colonial Federation is prepared to discuss peace terms, Lee announced, his words carrying across the galaxy through live broadcasts that billions of beings watched in frightened silence. We believe the Zephyrian Empire has gained valuable experience regarding the true costs of aggressive expansion. The ethereal consciousness, whose energy form flickered more wildly than anyone had ever seen, transmitted through its translator. How do they simply return to normal? The human emotional patterns show no trace of the predatory focus we observed during combat. How do they turn their killer instincts on and off like a machine? War Prime Sekthar appeared in the chamber through a holographic projector, since his homeworld no longer possessed the technology to send him physically across space. The once proud reptilian warrior was a broken figure, his scales dull and his movements slow. When he spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. "We never understood what we were challenging," he said, his words translated by the same mechanical device that had once carried his threats. No species in recorded galactic history has demonstrated such complete thoroughness in warfare. You did not simply defeat us, you erased our ability to ever threaten anyone again. Captain Park Ji-won, now serving as military advisor to the human diplomatic mission, provided the official assessment with the same cold precision that had characterized their military operations. The Zephyrian Empire's military recovery time is estimated at 50 standard years, assuming no interference. Their industrial capacity has been reduced to levels last seen before they developed space travel. They can no longer threaten any neighboring system. Around the circular table, alien representatives struggled to process what they had witnessed. The hive mind delegate clicked nervously, its rapid insect language translated as urgent questions. What of the higher protocols? What capabilities does humanity possess beyond what we have seen? Admiral Choi In-soo appeared via secure holographic link, his weathered face showing the same calm expression that had terrified the galaxy during the brief war. Protocol 7 represents the minimum force necessary to eliminate a military threat while preserving the possibility of future peaceful relations. Protocols 8 through 12 are designed for scenarios where such peaceful coexistence is neither possible nor desired. The chamber fell into complete silence. Even the normally active Vorthak crystals stopped their musical communications. Captain Kim Dae-hee, reviewing classified documents on her datapad, added quietly, Protocol 12 carries the designation Species Termination Parameters. We prefer not to discuss implementation details for obvious reasons. The implications hit the assembled aliens like a physical blow. Humanity had just demonstrated the systematic destruction of 2 major galactic civilizations, and they considered this a gentle response reserved for enemies they still hoped to coexist with peacefully. Within hours, the Galactic Council held an emergency vote that would reshape civilization across known space. Resolution 2847 passed without a single opposing voice. The Galactic Council formally requests that the Human Colonial Federation serve as primary mediators for all future interspecies conflicts. All member species agree to consult with humanity before initiating any major military actions against other civilizations. The resolution's real meaning was crystal clear to everyone present. No species wanted to discover what human warfare looked like when they decided peaceful coexistence was impossible. During the final diplomatic session, Ambassador Lee made a statement that would be studied in alien universities for generations. Fellow representatives, humanity has no desire to serve as the galaxy's police force. We are explorers, scientists, artists, and philosophers by nature. We prefer to build rather than destroy, to create rather than conquer, to cooperate rather than dominate. He paused, letting his words sink in while every alien in the chamber hung on his next sentence. But we are also the children of a world that spent millions of years trying to kill us in every way imaginable. We survived ice ages, volcanic eruptions, asteroid impacts, deadly predators, and countless diseases by becoming more dangerous than our environment. We evolved to be survivors. The ambassador's final words became the foundation of galactic diplomatic theory. Peace is not simply the absence of conflict, it is what happens when everyone truly understands the cost of war. We vastly prefer diplomacy, trade, cultural exchange, and mutual cooperation. But we are exceptionally skilled at the alternative when necessary. Captain Han Sujin, monitoring communications across the galaxy from her position aboard the human flagship, reported immediate results. Sir, we are detecting rapid resolution of conflicts throughout known space. 17 territorial disputes have been settled through negotiation. 12 resource conflicts have ended with compromise agreements. 3 active military campaigns have been suspended pending peaceful solutions. The transformation was visible across galactic civilization. Species that had been fighting for decades suddenly discovered the benefits of negotiation. The Rigelian Consortium immediately entered peace talks with their longtime enemies. The Centauri Trade Federation dropped all territorial claims against smaller neighbors. Even the notoriously aggressive warrior clans began seeking diplomatic solutions rather than military ones. In the months that followed, humanity found itself reluctantly serving as the galaxy's ultimate arbiters of conflict, not through force but through the simple knowledge that they possessed capabilities that no other species wanted to face.